Greetings from San Antonio, the Alamo City, where today the South Texas Derby will decide who moves on to the USL Championship Playoffs Western Conference Final. Welcome to this pregame show brought to you by the Striker Texas. Victor Risley, your host. I'm joined by Jonathan Check, Edson Ochoa. Where today, we got a big game here. We'll start with the hometown guy, Jonathan. How are you, and what can we expect tonight?
First of all, I'm doing all right. It's been an exciting week trying to put all this together, and obviously an exciting afternoon talking to supporters, hearing from both head coaches. As far as what I'm expecting from SAFC tonight, not too much different, I'd say. Definitely having to defend more than they were last week against San Diego, who fell into a 2-0 deficit early and really just couldn't get through SAFC. I'm sure RGV, and I said it on our podcast, will have a lot more going forward than San Diego did. But SAFC has definitely proven that they can handle it, and 3 straight clean sheets is a trend that I'm sure they'll want to continue.
Yeah, the home team will definitely want to win this, just not just for the rivalry, for the people here filing into Toyota Field. Edson making a drive up, like many have done here today, to support the home RGV back in the USL Championship playoffs. That has to feel good to say, and obviously right after the first playoff win in club history.
Yeah, definitely. It was a long time coming for a lot of the fans after having to deal with the Houston Dynamo and the way that they managed this team for 5 years. And back in the playoffs. Not only that, but going, like I mentioned in the last show, to the number one team in the Western Conference house and eliminating them in penalty kicks. It is definitely. Rang some bells throughout the Rio Grande Valley.
Well, let's talk about this game. Obviously, the first time the South Texas Derby happens in the USL Championship playoffs in the postseason, so that makes it much more important. Jonathan, you followed San Antonio FC for the Striker Texas all year long. Tell us what are some of the strongest points that San Antonio can count on tonight?
Well, obviously, first and foremost has to be home field advantage and thousands of fans egging them on. And I feel like last week for the first playoff game, we really saw the supporters take it up a level. And obviously, with even more on the line tonight and against their regional rival, they're going to want to take it up a notch. And hopefully, the Toros kind of push SAFC's home crowd as well, because that's only going to make it even louder. I remember 4 years ago when SAFC was first in the playoffs and had a decent run to this same round. Just the roar from the crowd when they scored, when they made a good play, it was louder than I've ever heard before. Additionally, SAFC's tactic of just being very direct and not dilly-dallying with the ball, I guess you could say, really playing, like I've said a few times before, almost half of their passes straightforward, not to either side or behind. They really just kind of, as I said on the podcast, go for the jugular. And I don't know if RGV's defense is going to be able to cope with that. We'll see.
Well, a cool 63 degrees tonight. It's a great weather for soccer. Edson, you've seen several of these South Texas derbies. RGV obviously getting it done on the road. Last week, maybe not a lot of people gave him a chance. You've heard some of the strengths that Jonathan just said. Can RGV get it done here tonight?
I definitely think that they can get it done, even without Jonas Joberg and, of course, Christian Sorto, who was on international duty with El Salvador, played some minutes yesterday as well.
Right, the international break
Yeah.
hurting RGVFC.
So definitely. But with the players that the team does have, like Elvis Amo, who's back from injury, with Kyle Edwards being on a hot streak at the end of this team, with the chemistry between Rodrigo Lopez, Andres Flores, and Emilio Icaza in the midfield, I definitely think offensively they can really worry San Antonio, who has to deal. Yes, they have their best players right now, except for Matt Cardoni. They brought in a player.
Not a big loss.
They brought in a keeper at the last minute to kind of substitute him in these playoffs.
Although RGV has a keeper substitution of their own.
Here's the difference. Colin Miller has practiced with the team throughout the whole season. The chemistry between Faro and his defensive line is still being built. So that could be a difference.
Well, we talked about the strength, Jonathan. Does Zetson have a point here? Is that the weak point for San Antonio, the goalkeeping?
I can't say whether it is a weak point, but it could be. We didn't really see Jordan Farr tested last week against San Diego. Like I said, their offense didn't have too much going forward, couldn't put it together in the final third. From what it sounds like, though, SAFC has had Farr on their radar for a couple years. So even if they didn't know him personally and knew how he personally would fit into the system, they knew the kind of player he was, and I'm sure could envision how he would slot right in. And I'm sure with another week under his belt, there will be at least a good enough amount of chemistry between that back line and Farr. And just at the end of the day, he's a good keeper. He's proven it with Indy 11. He proved it on a couple of occasions last week. And something that stuck out to me after last week's match is Jordan said, even when I took a free kick and sent it into the stands, my teammates were there behind me. They were saying, it's all right. You'll get it next time. And he didn't put a foot wrong for the rest of the game.
You've seen San Antonio all year long. Few people know them better than you. If you're the RGV head coach, where do you attack San Antonio?
I definitely think with SAFC's three-man backline, as strong as they've been in the last few matches and over the last few months, you might lack some of that width. And at times, as I'm sure they enjoyed doing last week against Phoenix, you'll find opportunities to counter. You'll find opportunities to get in behind when SAFC's wide players, presumably Connor Maloney and PC, I haven't seen the lineups yet, but it's usually them trying to get in behind those or even just letting them get forward and commit themselves into the attack could leave SAFC exposed. And RGV, even with a depleted attack, I'm sure will have ways of taking SAFC's defenders and giving them a run for their money.
And Edson, you've covered RGV throughout not just this season, but obviously for years. Also, like Jonathan has with San Antonio. Again, I pose to you the same similar question. If you know RGV like you do, if you're San Antonio, if you were coaching San Antonio, where do you pick apart RGVFC?
Well, for starters, I would go with the high pressure. I would pressure RGV right outside of their box, of their 18-yard box. Why? Because we've seen that all throughout the season. When they're going up against high pressure teams, it's RGV wants to touch, just pass the ball around from the defense to the midfield and then up there to the attackers. But when there's high pressure, it seems like they get this tunnel vision where they either hold on to the ball too long, and we saw that happen against Colorado Springs Switchbacks, but also, like we saw against Phoenix, it's like they try to force a pass into where the defenders are in their, and it just creates some havoc. You catch them off guard there, and with Pimentel being an aggressive center back, that'll, even if he doesn't slide and try to intercept something, you'll open up the spaces there inside the box to get some opportunities. So if I was Alan Morcina, I would try to exploit that weakness from RGV.
Yeah, we're in San Antonio for the USL Championship playoffs. San Antonio FC hosting RGVFC. One team will go to the Western Conference Final. Lineups are starting to come in here. Here we go, San Antonio FC. Jonathan, let's go through this lineup. Farr, the goalkeeper, solid choice.
No surprise there. I mean, Carlos Mercado, as good of a goalkeeper as he might be in years to come, is still young, is still unproven.
Let's run through some of this rest of the lineup. Ford, help me out here with some pronunciations. Kamiri, Taintor, Maloney. What do you think of that back line?
Was Ford in there?
Ford is in there, yes.
Okay, yeah, so typical back line for SAFC of Ford, Kamiri in the center, and Taintor. Something that I've thought would be interesting with this match is Taintor and Ford were not with SAFC any of the 4 times that they played RGV this year. So it'll be interesting for both sides to see if they are alert and know how to deal with the RGV attack. And on the flip side, for the RGV attackers, do they know how to exploit the weaknesses of those 3?
We also got Abu, Gallegos, PC, the captain, Epps. What do you think of the midfield?
Same midfield 4 that SAFC has been persisting with the last few years. few months, I should say. But Gallegos has been around for a few years, and who knows how much longer he might be here before he has a bigger move. But playing him in central midfield, I have gone on record as being somewhat skeptical of it. But when SAFC is pressing, it really helps to get that extra player with attacking flair in there rather than having someone who sits back more and maybe plays more of the passes. Jose can really run at defenses, can give any defender in the USL a run for their money, I'd say.
And then up top, number 7, Nathan. Number 9, Patiño.
Nathan Patino, same strikers as last week. Patino got his first goal since May, so interesting to see if he's able to continue his poaching ways. But the way he started the season and the way he's been the last few matches, I don't see why he can't. And you don't necessarily need to be fit, even though he had 3 months out with injury. You don't necessarily need to be fit to be smart and find yourself in the right places to nick a goal here or there.
Going quickly to the bench, Mercado, Varela, Glito, Dylan, Lima, Lindley, and Wright.
No surprises there. Some young players from the area, Carlos Mercado and Ali Wright. More experienced players, I should say, with the likes of Varela, and even Lindley, as young as he is, has plenty of experience in the USL. And I think, obviously, we don't want players to be injured, but if something does happen, SAFC's got strength off the bench that they can hopefully just slot in and make it a seamless transition if need be.
So strong San Antonio side. You spoke to the head coach during the week. Alan Marcino sat down. We'd like to thank San Antonio for that opportunity. What can you tell us about the talk during the week?
As I've said before, keeps his willing to talk about some of the pieces that RGV has that could worry them, specifically that they've added in the last few months since these two teams last met. Emilio Icaza, for example, and also taking players like Juan Carlos Azócar and Babacar Njai and putting them in dangerous fullback roles where they can get up and midfield and sitting back and attacking, trying to keep RGV from getting up there. Give any of them.
All right.
Colin Miller in goal. Looks like Tyler Derrick's not ready. You think there's another good performance tonight by Miller?
I definitely think he'll have a better performance than he did against Phoenix Rising. Granted, he ended the game on a strong note, but in the first half, it seemed like he was nervous. He was making some elementary mistakes when trying to come up for the ball and trying to get the possession of the ball up in the air. I don't think he's going to make the same mistakes in this particular game. And Colin Miller, when he was called up during the season to be the keeper, I think he did a phenomenal job, given the some of the situations that RGB was going through at the time. So I definitely think that Colin Miller, even though he's not the starter, but he is really not that much below. The drop off is not as great compared to Tyler Derrick.
RGVFC also going with a 3-man back line, at least from what we're reading here. Pimentel, Carter Manley, and Juan David Cabezas.
I actually think it's a line of 4, and honestly, this is how it's going to be. You're going to have Juan Carlos Azócar playing right back, Carter Manley and Eric Pimentel as the center back pairing, and Babacar Njai as the left back. That's how Wilmer Cabrera has been putting that defensive line for RGVFC.
That's why you're the pro. That's why you follow the team. Well, let's run through the rest of this line, like you just mentioned. So Cabezas, you're slotting into the midfield.
Correct, center defensive midfielder.
In there also Rodrigo Lopez and Andres Flores. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from this midfield.
Honestly, Rodrigo Lopez and Andres Flores, when Andres Flores was brought in, I definitely thought that, or in the first couple of games, Wilmer Cabrera would put in Andres Flores for Rodrigo Lopez. But now, at the end of the season, he found a way to implement Rodrigo, Andres Flores, and Emilio Icaza into this particular midfielder. And we're seeing this right now. And now you add the experience of Juan David Cabezas, as the holding midfielder. You've got Rodrigo and Andres as more central midfielders, and then playing in a quasi number 10, Emilio Icaza.
Well, you just mentioned Icasa, obviously part of the forward corps here tonight. Kyle Edwards, Elvis Amo, who was the hero, right? The winning penalty.
Definitely, he was, coming back from an injury. It's obviously great to see him in such a good form. The biggest incognito is how is Kyle Edwards going to be able to form a cohesive attacking unit with Kyle Edwards. We really haven't seen much of them together in the season. It was usually with Jonas Gelberg behind Kyle Edwards. I was about to call him a NASCAR driver, just But I definitely think that even with the fact that they haven't played together for a lot of games, I definitely think they can find a way to complement each other's play styles.
If he's as fast as a NASCAR vehicle, San Antonio might have some trouble here. Real quickly, the bench here for RGVFC, Javier Garcia, the backup goalkeeper, Adrian Dispe, who I know you've mentioned has been a good player for RGV this year, John Sanchez, Adrian Vera, Vicente Sanchez, who is still going strong at 41 years old,
Yes.
James Murphy, and Alexis Cerritos. Overall, your thoughts on the RGVFC lineup and their bench?
Well, Adrian Vera, we know that Wilmer Cabrera has used him as a defender, so he would probably, if he would need to come into the game, he would probably come in for Babu Karjai. He's another similar characteristics midfielders that Wilmer Cabrera has kind of improvised as defenders. Um, John Henry Sanchez, a player that has been missing throughout most of the season. When he played, I wasn't really convinced of what he brought to the table. Javier Garcia, a young goalkeeper from the Rio Grande Valley, from Juarez Lincoln High School, that they signed when Tyler Derrick was injured during the season. So here he doesn't have any professional experience. He does have some experience with UTRGV, but here's hoping that the team won't have to rely on him coming into the pitch. I'm not saying he might be a bad keeper, but the experience in these kind of matches is definitely important.
All right, Jonathan. Obviously, San Antonio has some MLS experience in there, just like RG, Courtney Ford, PC. But who are the players we should be looking out for tonight? Maybe the one difference maker that you can point out for SAFC.
Obviously, when you're looking at who's going to be a difference for SAFC, who is going to score the goals, because at the end of the day, and this is something that SAFC's former head coach Darren Powell said many, many times, goals change games. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what happens in the 90 minutes so much as what that scoreboard says at the end. But the forwards will draw all the attention, and like I mentioned earlier, you've got Jose Gallegos, a very dynamic player who can take the ball in midfield, run at defenses, could score a goal himself, could bring one or two guys with him and get one of his forwards to have more space ahead of them. I think it's also, as I've said a few times, you've just got to keep an eye on that defense for SAFC. It's been really solid the last few matches and the last few months, and I don't expect to see any mistakes, but RGV will, I'm sure, have something to say about that.
That's in RGVFC. Who's the difference maker tonight? Who has to step up for the Toros?
I think definitely the difference maker is going to be Rodrigo Lopez. He can help out not only offensively but defensively as well. He has had many great interceptions and, of course, recoveries in the midfield. When you think that the forward or the opposing midfielder is going to run away with it, like he just comes out of nowhere and makes that very timely slide to dispossess his opponent. I think, and of course, you can't forget that Rodrigo Lopez, he has been very, very lethal in set pieces. So I think for RGB, Rodrigo Lopez is going to be the difference maker.
Well, and we had Rodrigo Lopez on thestrikertexas.com. More information from these two teams. Great work all year by Jonathan. Obviously, Edson down in RGV. You can find all this on thestrikertexas.com. Follow us on social media at the Striker Texas, where we can follow your teams, your Texas teams closer. MLS, NWSL, USL, all the way down to the grassroots. We thank you for joining us for this pregame show. Again, post-game coverage, in-game coverage we'll have on the Striker Texas. For Jonathan Check, for Edson Ochoa, let's get going. The South Texas Derby is going to be a good one, and it's going to decide the finalist in the Western Conference Final for the USL Championship playoffs.
Definitely.